Well, welcome back to Staff Stories. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us during this time. We've loved doing this live stream and introducing you to staff members and hearing a little bit about their experience throughout this interesting season. If we haven't met before, my name is Sarah, and I get to be the Associate Director here at Calvary Young Adults Ministry. And today I'm extra excited because I get to introduce basically my closest coworker and my supervisor. This is Pastor Brian Williams, who's actually the director of our young adult ministry. So welcome,
Hello.
Brian.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's a wonderful day.
Good. It is a wonderful day. And since I haven't really shared too much about what's going on in YA, would you like to just tell us what you've been excited about? Like, how has the young adults ministry been?
Yeah, I'd love to share, and I think we both can. Really,
Yeah.
Because so how has it been?
Yeah, how's it been? Like, highlights, like, tell us,
Oh man,
what does it look like?
I think you and I both, like, during quarantine, when we were just doing online only, service was interesting.
Yeah.
Very different. Even some of I know you sent the questions before, like, one of the things that just really stands out is adaptability over quarantine.
Yeah.
We've had to be adaptable, not just in our personal life, like Amy and I.
Yeah.
Amy's my wife. But ministry has had to be very adaptable. And from doing service online and figuring out what that even looks like.
Right.
How do we even do that? You know, you and I aren't production people. So.
Unfortunately not. Shout out to our wonderful teams, though. We had a lot of help. So if you thought it looked great, that was them.
And interesting note, maybe not many of you knew this, but we had constraints on how many people could be there to help. So that meant during some services, literally Sarah and I, like, running from one place to the other, like getting at a camera, moving, focusing, okay.
Going back to the tech booth, like, announcements. Yeah, you may have noticed there were a lot of dresses and tennis shoes during that time because lots of stairs to run up. But yeah, it was definitely one of those interesting things where, like, we can do it and we want to do it. We feel the need. But it was, it felt different than getting to go and be with, the 300 plus people we normally get to see and just seeing volunteers. That was probably the saddest part, not just because it was extra work, but to not have our volunteers with us and, like, just like greet team, setup team, our, like, tech team. It was, it was definitely
It's hard. And I know it's hard for them. Obviously, it's hard not to get together.
Yeah.
And one of the best parts about that is that we are together now. Like, we have been able to have services come together. And I know for a lot of people that come on Sundays, there's just such a longing for that to happen again. And I get that because we've been able to experience having it come together again.
Yes.
And man, what a windfall just for my soul. I think for the soul of many people.
Yeah.
You and I, in terms of doing ministry and just doing work, whatever that work was throughout the week, even just the simple things of, like, hey, we need somebody to, organizing things for a service.
Yeah.
Or it just was like, oh, we get to be together again.
Yes.
We get to sing collectively and praise Jesus together and laugh together at a sermon joke rather than it being like, ha ha. Oh.
Us in the audience.
I think that was funny.
Affirming you and Brian and Howard going, amen.
Yes.
The one little tiny speck in the background of the camera noise.
So good. I think for everybody to be able to come together. And with what's gone on in YA, it really, this whole quarantine time and the transition ministry-wise, you and I both have got to see that time where we weren't able to be together, where everything was online,
right,
and then being able to come back together has sort of been like a reset.
I would say so, yeah. Like a refreshment of, like, the why, like, why church? I think that's a huge thing I've seen of, like, having young adults come in from different communities, and it's like, okay, well, you can, technically, like, hang out with whoever you want to right now, even, within reason, but why community centered on Jesus, and why come and spend your nights worshiping and learning the word? Because, like, we don't get to have even our typical, like, mingle time, like we joke about, or, like, not everyone feels comfortable going out to dinner afterwards. So why do people come to church? And I think, like, reestablishing that foundation has just been so transformational, I think, for us and for our people, to be like, okay, it's because of who Jesus is, and, like, our souls need that right now and always. But I agree.
and even with that, like, this is another word from the
we'll just do a recap.
Simplicity.
Yeah.
I think coming back together and having service together, having it outside, actually has been really beautiful, because it's even going outside and it being like, how do we do service out here? You know, that also was a learning curve and adaptability, figuring out how do we bring people in? Where are they going to sit? Like, how do we set up the stage? How do we even get people on stage so we're not violating protocols? Like, how do we do this? And it really just was a kind of a pulling back any veneers, any sacred cows for that use of that term, I guess, of like things that just we've always done that, but do we need to?
Yeah.
And kind of getting back to like, this is what we're here for.
Right.
Preach the word, be together, praise Jesus.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. And it's been wonderful to see that kind of just come together on Thursday nights with service, and to see, it's encouraging too, just to see that people are hungry for that and come into service and come into lean in and seek prayer and all those things. It's been beautiful. So it's been, for all of the challenges of COVID and quarantine, God is at work.
Yeah.
He's at work, and he's moving, and he is using this. He keeps working through this. And in YA, I think we're really seeing that. We're seeing fruit, the first fruits in maybe some ways for Calvary of what God's doing in this and through this.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
Absolutely. I agree. And I can affirm those things. And it's fun to have you here to be able to talk about those things, because I've gotten to hear about, what God has been doing through all these ministries, a lot that we don't see because they're not services. But just to know God really is doing a lot, just even in the hearts of our staff and our members, that has transformed the way we operate, like the posturing of our hearts towards God. And I think, you've mentioned two of your words, adaptability, simplicity. I think those can be translated personally, corporately, but I so agree. And I don't know, did you want to, are those terms you want to expand on, maybe your third term? But is there anything you want to add? Because that's within the context of our ministry, but
that's within the context of ministry, and then also personally for myself and for my family. I think those things fit in there too: simplicity and adaptability. And the third term, maybe to choose the three, would be delight.
Wow, no one has said that one yet.
It's good. It's fun to be original.
It's fun to be original, but I think it's also unique. You think about the season, and delight maybe isn't the first term that comes to mind for people.
Yeah, and it's not in any way to negate the negatives or the challenges, but the adaptability in personal life, working with Sarah and I especially, who we are, is how God has made us, how God has gifted us, and also in this beautiful, unique way, the way God has brought us into this place, and the way that church leadership has positioned her and I to leverage our gifting, which is pastoral. Our gifting is pastoral. That's what God has blessed us with and equipped us for, to serve people. And we are in a place where we can meet with people, pray with people, talk with people, counsel people, walk them through hard things. And that's, I think, for me, where I am most alive, because I think that's where God is, what he made me that way, to be most alive in that sphere. And so COVID originally, especially on the front end, really yanked a lot of that stuff out from under us.
Through relational touch points and pieces.
And how we do. I think we're comfortable doing it in this certain way. And then now to be like, whoa, how do we God, how do I exercise these giftings? Or do I just put them on the shelf?
Possibly replace a coffee day. And that's kind of how it felt, where you're this is not the same. This isn't as intentional.
So hard.
But then you realize okay, no, God can still, there's ways to operate in those gift sets.
Yeah. And so I think that fits within the adaptable of it just being, you need to be adaptable on that end, but also in the home and figuring out how do we get groceries?
Yeah.
Who do we spend time with? And what does spending time with somebody look like? the neighbor kids on the street, like, oh man, it'd be so, like, especially in the beginning when so much was unknown, it was like, we have a 2.5-year-old and he's just a ball of energy and it's just always going and it's wonderful. But to think of keeping him in the house is just not.
Seen it. It's not all. It's not as optimal.
Not going to go well for anyone. And so to be able to go out and have to figure out how, okay, you can go out and you can ride your bike, and then other neighbor kids are going to ride their bikes, but nobody get off their bikes. Like, and trying to figure that out, and then just constantly adapting to, okay, well now, even in that simple scenario, like, okay, as time went on, we have a better idea of, the people on our street and kind of how everybody's working. We all have more of an understanding. The community was built. I mean, the idea of delight, I think that's been something that we've seen even with our neighbors, like from the depth of our relationship with our neighbors, in large part because we have young kids that can't be locked up in a house all day, or it's hard to be. We've grown in figuring out how to delight in just the people on our street and the simplicity of that. And then in the home, like, it's been great to be home. It's been great to have more time. I know your family's
loved that. It's like hard now when you're like even coming into the office to see that, but I think it's like, that is beautiful to even witness, to be like, families do better when they see more of each other. Like, absolutely.
And that all kind of feeds to the simplicity of sort of things being pulled out, that it's like, these things that I thought were necessary maybe aren't as necessary as I thought. And so it's been really good. I think that's fed to the delight. Now, it's not to negate some of the challenges and things like that. I'm generally a cup is half full sort of person. So
this is true.
So it's been fun to just be able to delight in being together and having time together. And at night, I know almost every week of the night, like, I know exactly what's going to be happening in my home because the rhythms are there. The simple rhythms of, we come home, we have dinner together, we wrestle, we maybe have a dance party, and we it's just great. It's fun. Not easy always, but there's places to delight in, making intentions to do that.
Yeah. And I think to cultivate that, I think there is something in like taking that posturing with you even through hard seasons, because like you said, like, hasn't been easy. I mean, like, you added a new member to your family this year too, like, which was like, to think about that in the midst of everything I know for Amy, and like figuring out to see, like, do we take Kelly around family members? Like, there's all these little decisions, but to see like how you guys have even chosen to be like, we're gonna be really stoked about this portion of this, or like, we're so glad to spend more time as family in this season. And same with Brian Howard, adding a new family member, like in that same kind of season, being like, you know what? Why wouldn't we want to be home with a newborn? Like, this is awesome.
I think it's so funny, all the COVID babies.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just because their experience and that family's experience of inviting a new child into the world and into the family is like, that is a different experience than most people.
Welcome to the world. It's not normally like this, but
hi, little one.
Hey.
It's good to see you. It's strange.
I know. I wonder if this generation of kids, just in decide, will be afraid of masks, or if it'll be like strangely comforting to them. To like anytime.
They'll see a smile and be like, "What is that?
What is that? There's teeth like a monster." Like, who knows? We'll come back in 13 years for an interview with all the quarantines and see what happened.
Wow, that's a good one.
I stole it, but yeah, it's all very interesting. But to even like laugh at some of the things like that, like knowing that like there's a serious side to it, and there is like, man, like to consider, to count your blessings, and like, as cliche as that may seem, to be like, you know what, this is delight, this might not be a delight, and it's part of like returning to simplicity. So I love that. And I think you kind of like expanded a little bit on, okay, bringing it to like family and bringing it to your immediate surroundings. But is there anything you would say like very like interpersonally that you feel like has been refined in you, or developed in you during this season, like in your own walk, or like in your own mindset?
Yeah. I think I've touched on it some. Maybe I haven't actually, but Rhythm has been a thing that's being refined.
Okay.
I am not one who tends to like even the right term. I am not the most disciplined or regimented in my, I don't have the same breakfast every morning. I don't.
You're not Steve Jobs. So you pick the same outfit every day just to maximize creativity. I'm
not. And it's not like always an intentional thing. It's just like even honestly in raising kids and being like, bedtime routines. It's really important for kids to have a bedtime routine. I struggle with the bedtime routine. It's not really my son. It's me who struggles with the bedtime routine. And during this time, like we as a family have established some rhythms. There's some other things that we've done and just trying to be more disciplined in having a regular pattern to how I go about life. Now, that's not being slave to that pattern, but the pattern benefits me. It benefits my family. It puts us in a better place. So working towards some of those things. An example, and this gets to another question of what's something I would really look forward to continuing. And one of it is something we've implemented during this time is we call it Fun Fridays. It's our family's Fun Friday.
Yes.
It is now something I just love and always look forward to is every Friday, because it's a day off for me, and it's right after Thursday night service, and so it's a day to we've been apart sort of throughout the week, or I've been busy or different things, so it's like Fridays are our Sabbath day together as a family, and every Friday morning we go to the beach. It's like that's what we're doing. No matter what the weather's like, maybe we'll stay there shorter, maybe we'll stay there longer, and then on the way home we're going to get in and out because it's simple and it's cheap and it's wonderful. We love it.
No one can test.
No
one can contest that.
And even just that morning routine. Like there's been days where, my wife and I are like, well, should we go to the beach? The beach is work, like there's certain things about it that it's like, oh, it is a little, the weather's not great or whatever. But we've just made a decision that, no, this is a rhythm we're going to keep. And every time we don't regret it. And it actually simplifies our life to the point where I can put energy towards other things. I can put emotional energy, decision-making energy towards other things because I just know.
You've already said yes.
We're going to the beach. That's what we're doing. And then instead of it being this complicated, well, if we don't go to the beach, then what are we going to do? And trying to, all these other decisions to make, it's like, this is just what we're going to do. And then on Friday night, so we have a young adult actually who we have like an apartment kind of thing. That's a part of our house. This woman, Kendall, lives with us, lives in that apartment, but it's part. And so every Friday she comes over and she's the one who instituted this. She was like, I want to do this. And we're like, yes. We have pizza night. So she comes over and we get ingredients from Trader Joe's and we make pizza together and we eat pizza and then we just hang out and play and make 10-4ths and whatever else. And it's like the rhythm of that. Just knowing that that's going to be there and count on, and the simplicity and the peace and calmness of we're just together. Yeah. And I'm just so thankful for that. Yeah. I'm so thankful for that. And that's something that my wife is she's more regimented. Maybe that's not the right term,
I feel like Amy and I have similar personalities where sometimes systems really honor us because it's the thought process of and you don't have to make 14 decisions when you've already made one. Yeah. And I think in Sabbath too, the idea of rest is resting in that decision. And there's a lot of spontaneity that comes with that, but I've seen it really bless her too, of just oh, this is great. And and we know at this time we're gonna rest, or Kendall's gonna come over, and it was really awesome. And I love it.
The rhythm, it really is freeing. And it's interesting. I'm I talk to people about spiritual disciplines. Yeah. This is so good for you. But then for myself during this time to be it is.
Oh when the second wind of revelation comes and you're oh my gosh, if you actually, because I feel you. Yeah, I'm rest, Sabbath. Yeah, cool. And then school comes or work comes and I'm I literally haven't Sabbathed in 4 months. Then you do it and you're guys, no, this is legit. It's not, what the Bible says is true.
You wouldn't believe it.
But I think it's amazing to experience that and speak from that. Not that I was disingenuous before, but that fresh place, I think, of experience and overflow. And even when you've invited me along with your family a few times to the beach and that's restful for me. When I'm I have a million things I can do, but Friday is also my Sabbath. So it's kind of setting that tone to be like, oh yeah, because it does set example for people in your life, and like it's encouraged me to rest more and be like, it's okay to just take a day off, or like make a good meal tonight and like hang and like not have to fill it in with people. Because like you said, you know, your gifting and my gifting being pastoral, like we love people, and like we will literally fill all our time with people. And like outside of your family, which you make time for, it's like, I think it's amazing just to say, I'm going to designate this and enjoy what God has given me.
Yeah, it's been good. So it's been a learning experience. So thank you for being on the journey with me.
No, of course.
And my wife, she's so gracious.
Oh, she is. Amy, we love you.
She is. So much. I love you so much. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. I'll write you a note later.
You can do,
Other people don't need to be involved in this.
Yeah, it's okay. We could do shout outs. We love that. We love it. I shout out to my mom a lot.
Okay, what else do we need to talk about?
Yes. Okay, so that was one side of the coin. The other, kind of addressing that the season has been hard, and I think it has brought up a lot interpersonally, spiritually, emotionally, likewise, that maybe is a little bit more disappointing, or like putting it this way, what in the season have you felt has been disappointing or difficult, whether that's something you're seeing inside yourself circumstantially, like what is the other side of that for you, and how you maybe address some of those things as they have come to the surface?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think, especially in the beginning, helplessness. Just feeling helpless. Just feeling like I don't know what I can do. I don't know how I can help.
Yeah.
Feeling like, helpless, I guess. To where even, like I said, even the gifting part, right? Like even the tools that I've been given, feeling like those have been like undercut, or feeling like, well, then what do I do now? Honestly getting pouty. Be like, come on. And I think maybe many of us have like at certain points over this. It's been months. Like this has been a long time.
We're almost in 9 months.
Oh, it's crazy. It's a long time, and so there's plenty of time for us all to have our highs and lows. And that sense of helplessness coming at different times. I think the complexities that this lays over relationships, like you mentioned, even with the kids and family, and I think of my grandparents, and like I want to see my grandparents. I want to be with my grandparents. I want my kids to know their great grandparents. You know, and like these are opportunities, these are times, these are months that are going on. But then there's like, but I want to protect them. But then is that really my responsibility? Is it their choice? There's just the complexity of all of it, and it just muddies the waters emotionally and relationally in a lot of places and ways. And honestly, that's been really hard, I think. And in some ways feeling helpless to that, feeling like I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to remedy this. Just go away, COVID. Right. And then I can start having some sense of control and being able to navigate these things. So,
I think that's huge. I mean, that's even something we talked about in YA a couple weeks ago, about like where anger comes from, is like a sense of loss and helplessness, and knowing like even what's triggering that, and identifying, like I've been considering a lot of how we, even before this, there's so many things in life we don't actually have control over. Like it's very much this illusion of control, but then you confront things that you at least used to think that you could control. And it's like, what do you do with that? And it can bring into focus some pieces of our heart before God that are like, ooh, I don't love that, you know, or like, how do you, you know, like even for you, like, how do you feel, or what has that process been like, bringing that feeling of helplessness before God, or addressing it? Because sometimes it is just like, do I just throw my arms up and say, this sucks? Or like, you know, because sometimes it is just like, can't do anything.
Come on. It's taken on different forms. I think there have been times where it has just sort of been like, come on, you know. but that's not a good place to end.
Right.
And I don't think it's been helpful when I've lingered there longer than just the initial, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Now, how am I going to respond to this feeling? What am I going to do with this feeling? If I just linger on the feeling sometimes for too long, that's not always helpful. But one of the things, even this summer, something that Sarah and I did with another staff member is we spent time, or I guess it was spring and summer. Yeah. We actually went to we started going through some different leadership books, some different things related to leadership development and theory and whatnot. And honestly, just getting into things that are challenge me to think about what and why and how I do things. That was so helpful. And at times those preparing for some of those meetings and stuff like that was some of the things that helped me get out of it, and just in terms of thinking oh, right. And it's so cool. Leadership stuff's neat because it all just points back to the Bible.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised of okay, what new method haven't I not heard of as a Christian? And you're so much of it comes down to interpersonal skills, integrity, humility, submission,
purpose.
What goal are you going towards? Knowing yourself, knowing others, not being self-focused. It's pretty wild. And then you're boop, 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 boop. Here's these little pieces of my heart where what can you control? Your heart posture.
Yeah. And all of those things, I think those drawing back to Scripture, drawing back to this is what God says is true and real, and to be oh, right.
Yes.
All right. That's what matters. To be able to take those times and zoom out from me, and zoom out to oh, there's a big overarching thing going on, or even to look at the church. When what is going to happen to the church? What's Lord how many people within our congregation do I have no idea how they're doing? Yeah. Because they're the people who have come once or twice, or they're the few people who come in and leave right away, who I have no way of connecting with. I have no way of making sure they're doing all right. I have no way to reach out to them, and just to remember, oh, right, you're in charge. I'm not responsible for them.
Yes.
I'm responsible to you and how I care for them and what I do with the opportunities you've given me. But you, Lord, are the one who's in charge. You, Lord, are the one who is taking care of them and leading them, and me. You're in charge of me. And those things I think have been really helpful in those times to sort of, or those are, examples. Something.
No, and it's unique to you, but it's also, I think, just good practicals, because I imagine you're not the only person who's felt helpless, but to know okay, there's the acknowledgement of the feeling of sometimes it is just wow, this sucks. I'm allowed to be upset for a second, but then if you want to grow in health and development, we talked about using that word leadership development, and going back to Scripture, going back to those places of all right, Jesus, you really I'm dependent on you. Yeah. So just coming back to that place, I think, is so good for us in our hearts, and our view of God, which kind of leads into the next question, which is, did you have something you wanted to add? you put your hand on the table. I did. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I felt that was a very mom reaction. I was yes, Brian, did you?
Sorry.
Proceed.
So I think something that you just pointed out, and that's really where I was going with the leadership development stuff, is the proactiveness. That when I felt helpless, and that's what we see in Scripture, right? That's what the Bible, you and I were just talking about this morning, that the Bible is not this it's not primarily here's the things you do. It's primarily, sometimes we can think that that's what it is. That it's
it's a rule book or a guide to living your best life type thing, where every single verse has something for that, but there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it.
Ultimately, what we see is it's a very dumbed down, or simplistic. Is it's the Bible is saying this is who God is, this is what He's up to, and these are the things He's into, and then it's God entrusting us to be proactive.
Yes.
About,
yes.
Okay, now how do we respond to that? It's not him saying, in some places it is direct saying, here's how you respond to that reality.
Yes, of course.
But most of it is like, okay, here's these things, respond. And these things should inform you and give you a framework to be able to work out how you respond to that in the proper way in this circumstance, in this situation. And ultimately, it's a call to be proactive. Yeah. We're not just cogs in this wheel, and we just have to like obey this thing and fit ourselves in. And I think that sense of feeling helpless comes from a mentality that thinks of myself in that way.
Totally. Yeah, where it's no use in being proactive, or there's no growth point in you. Yeah. But I think it is cool, like the dependency on God, like he gives us the freedom to grow too, and like to become more like Christ. And like it is like we're called to be childlike in our faith, but part of that too is like we're maturing in our faith. And like with your kids, like we've kind of talked about this because they're great examples, but like there's certain things you would never get upset with, like Isaac or Ellie. Like if Ellie, like you're not gonna be like, I can't believe you can't drive the car. Like, are you kidding me? Like I told you to put it in reverse. Like she's literally a baby. Like she's
9 months, 10 months.
Yeah, 10 months old. Or like with Isaac, like letting him try again. Like when we were climbing up this lifeguard tower and he got really scared, and both you and Amy were just encouraging him, like you can do it. And then he wanted to come back and do it because you gave him the opportunity to learn. And I think in the same way, it's like, I think for the human experience under God, like taking scripture and saying like, I can apply these things, and there's also this freedom of like, I'm learning and I'm growing. And like my father is the father, and I'm still like, I'm never gonna outgrow God. Like, so I actually have this like, I can come in, like you said, rhythm with God to know that he's gonna help me through these things that I feel helpless in, or that like I don't understand. And like that's definitely how scripture works, is like, okay, like apply it, be obedient. Yeah. But it's not always going to be like, Brian, tomorrow when you wake up, here's the 5 next steps.
Do these things.
It's like you have to know the character of God and know who he is.
There's no limit to the opportunity. Circumstances do not limit the opportunity for growth, for transformation. Yeah. Romans 12:1-2, right? Like, like there's no limit. And so the circumstance does not limit that we can be proactive about the purpose and meaning of our life and the fruitfulness of it. Yeah. There's fruit no matter the circumstance. And so I think that proactiveness to lean into that mindset. Sometimes there's like feelings, and like you have this feeling and then or a motivation, and then we act out of that motivation. Right. Other times we need to act our way into motivations. Ooh, that's good. And, not original to me, but exactly, because having the aim and like knowing that the aim still exists. But I love that. Thank you for letting me share. Oh no, anytime. Yeah, this could be our like. Excuse me. Yeah, this table's metal, so you can always exactly. Was there another question? There is another question, and I think you could expand on this, but looking at the character of God himself, and like who God has been to you and how you see God in the world, like what have you learned about God during this time? Something that has been like highlighter over this time of like God being like, hey, did you notice that? Like, I think that he's all that matters. He's all that matters. That like, even thinking like election stuff, like he's all that matters. Like he's all that matters. This COVID stuff, all of it, like his church, his kingdom, is what matters, and it's not going to fail. Yes. It won't be stamped out. It won't be overcome. And so that all these other things, it just simplifies. It just narrows the focus on the like, this is what I'm going to grab a hold of. And these other things, all right. Yeah. Okay, cool. There's things here that would be really painful that I really don't want to come about, Lord. But I know this is going to be fine. Yeah. And so I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to hold on to you, and I'm going to pursue that. And I think that even in our preaching and in the teaching and the things that God has been leading, you, me, Brian Howard, Jacob Wood, as we've been stewarding the young adults ministry, God's just been leading us towards that simple premise, I think, in general. Like, look at him and look at the kingdom and all these other things. Like, they're not unimportant, but they will fade in how they, I don't know, control you.
Yeah, and how you can move through, like, it's not like a bifurcation of, like, it's like God or all these other things. Like, I mean, in our allegiance and our submission and our, like, we talked to David about, like, Lordship, like, yes, like, we died to ourselves for the sake of being alive in Christ, like, for the sake of, like, taking hold. We, you know, in Hebrews 12, talking about, like, the weight and the sin that so easily entangles us, like, getting rid of that for that race. But the beautiful thing about that is through those actions, like, you can make hard decisions. You can navigate a politically polarized world. You can navigate contentious, like, family situations or sickness or death and things that are just unthinkable. But when God is primary, he actually leads us. That's, like, you know, I think about, you know, or like Psalm 23, he can lead us by the still waters. He can lead us through the valley of death, and yet we have no fear.
The valley's still there.
It's still there, yeah.
And you're still in it.
Yes.
But you're not in it alone.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's just a beautiful point of, like, letting God be all consuming and knowing, like, his eyes and hands are on the details of everything else in our life. Because, like, I think that's hard for me, being a more, like, systems type A controlling person, like, or, like, control oriented person is just like, I want to get everything figured out and know even what God's thinking or how he's going to lead me, instead of just being like, I love you. This is really hard, but I'm gonna look at you. You know, like, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you, God. Like, I think that is just one of the most, like, steadfast, lasting pieces of advice that I think anyone could take as a follower of Christ.
I think of what you had mentioned earlier today as well, with that if you didn't realize, she and I were having conversations actually about what our 2021 sermon.
We work together sometimes, you know.
Plan would be like, we're discussing, but about Lordship, about the Lordship of Christ, and ultimately that's at the core of Christian faith. That is, like, you can almost boil things down to Jesus is Lord. I mean, actually, that's what the early church did.
Yes.
And that Jesus is Lord, and is he?
Yeah.
Like, is he?
Do we live as if he is?
Yeah.
So that's one to take home. It's a good gut check for me on the daily. So I'll let you guys sit in that. But truly, like, I think these things are good to marinate in, and there's been so much wisdom in each of these sessions. So even comment if that is a question that you've been thinking about, or if there's anything here that's resonated with you. We'd love to hear it. And kind of, so the final thing, kind of to sum up everything we've been talking about, is looking at the season up to this point, because we don't know how much longer this season, whatever this is, will last. What are some rhythms or habits or mindsets you would want to take back into, you know, life post-COVID, post this kind of consuming period of, like, that being a very main fixture?
Yeah, I don't know. I think most of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, you've talked about some good rhythms, and
I think most of those things. The general idea of simplicity, and bring that in, even especially at work. I think it's easy to get consumed thinking about all the things that I should be doing or could be doing, rather than just focusing on the, like, what's the one or two things, even just this week, what are the one or two things that if I accomplish those, I will have done the best thing I could do. And that simplicity, I think, extending into other things, even at home. Like, all right, you know, all these chores I want to get done, or whatever it is, you know, or it's like, you know, I want to watch that baseball game or whatever, and kind of letting all of these desires be boiled down to, like, okay, but what's the best thing I can do? And if I get that done, then I've been successful, and I'll be pleased with my day and myself. Yeah, if that makes sense. And totally. So I think that's good. So I want to encourage any parent. The challenging thing, this is presumptive, but at least for me, and maybe for many of you, is to delight in our kids. And I just think it's so important for us to delight in them, even when they're hard, even when they're like, you're like, whose child are you?
Who made you? Surely not me.
Where did you come from? That, like, ultimately God delights in us. And for any point of discipline, for all of those things, to just keep coming back around to how do I delight in them?
Yeah.
How do I delight in you? Because, oh man, our kids need that. And I've been noticing that over this time, like how much these kids just need to delight in them. Even looking at the neighbor kids, even the opportunities that I have with the neighbor kids, how much they just want to be delighted in, and in simple things like, wow, cool stick. Like, that's awesome. Thanks for showing me. And those little things, they just go such a long way. Just the kids, I think we all know, can't boost, that's why we're doing it. Yeah. Man, kids, they need it. So even from a distance, if there's little things we can do to delight in the children in our lives or in the children around, even that you see, a kid on a scooter going by in front of your house, you're like, cool scooter, man.
So true.
It's awesome. Great job. Like,
so true.
Those little things, I think, go a long way.
Yeah.
To expressing and showing the delight and love of God that He has in each of us.
I love that. That's a great reminder. And I think brings it back, like you said, to how God views us. And we're all made to be delighted in. And I think like the more we extend that, the more it opens our own awareness of God's delight in us. And I think that's a perfect place to end, and just encourage you guys to like ask this week, like, Lord, how do you delight in me? And then give me eyes to see delight in others and to encourage that and call that out, because it may seem very small, but it could be monumental in someone's paradigm of how they view themselves and they view God. So.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Brian, for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah.
Extending our workday and
fun.
Taking time and sharing just what the Lord's been doing in your life. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for you guys, thank you for tuning in. We've loved doing Stop Stories. We look forward to next week, but have a happy Friday.